everyone, and welcome. I'm Ben Williams, and I run corporate development and strategic partnerships at Glean. I'll be your host for today's session on securing enterprise AI with Glean and Palo Alto Networks. We know most of you are CISOs, security leaders, and security practitioners who are under intense pressure to move faster on AI while still keeping a very tight grip on risk. The tension is exactly why we're here today. So quick housekeeping before we jump in. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A panel. We'll try to weave those into the discussion, and we'll have some time at the end to go through them. And you'll also get a recording and key takeaways from this, so no need to try to capture everything on your own. With that, I'm excited to introduce our speakers. Joining us today are Ian Swanson and Sunil Agrawal. Ian and Sunil, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thanks, Benton. I'm Ian Swanson. I'm the AI security leader at Palo Alto Networks.
Good. Sunil Agrawal, the Chief Security Officer here at Glean. Been at the company a little over 3 years, been in the security industry good 25 plus years.
Great. All right, well, I'll kick things off. Ian, I'd like to start with you. When you're talking to security leaders about AI right now, what are you hearing? Like, what's top of mind?
Yeah, so I've been in AI for 20 years. So throughout those 20 years, I've talked to many CIOs about the adoption of AI. And something that's been pretty unique in just the last 2 to 3 years is AI is now viewed as mission critical today. Every CIO, every company is adopting AI, and many of them at scale. But the control plane for AI risk is extremely fragmented. And the question is not whether we adopt AI or not, it's whether we're building AI faster than we can secure it. And so many of the CISOs that I meet with, again, on a weekly basis, they like to tell me that there really should be no AI in any enterprise without security of AI.
And so when you assess the AI programs at the companies, what do you typically find that's surprising to people?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that's surprising is while 78% of organizations are starting to scale out AI adoption throughout their company, only 6% actually have a security framework in place. And if you think about, how do we secure AI, we got to think about securing it end to end. And so as we think about a security framework, perhaps secure by design, for AI, and I know Sunil is going to have a lot of good thoughts on how we should think about it. The end-to-end process can start with, let's scan the unique artifacts of AI, whether it's models, agents to MCP servers. How do we behaviorally test this in production-like environments? And then in production, at the point of inference, how do we add runtime guardrails to make sure that the AI is doing the right things and that we can block anything malicious?
Sunil, I'd love for you to build on that. When you're thinking about securing AI end to end, how do you break down the problem?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, I've been in the security industry good 25 plus years. I've seen a lot of these movements. The moment that we started adopting SaaS, way back when. Then we moved to the cloud. We had a mobile adoption wave. Now, of course, there's this AI adoption wave. This, of course, is bigger than all the previous movements all put together. So absolutely agree with Ian. This is right in front and center for every CEO, CIO, CISO. Now, when you think about securing AI or agentic AI, again, there are lots of lessons that we have learned as to how we secure either SaaS or software. So the principles remain the same. We just need to tweak those principles. I tend to break down things into 3 parts. What are the things that you need before you deploy AI or agentic AI? So visibility, shift left. The second part is the runtime security, correct? As those agents are executing, what kind of guardrails you can have so that it does not go off the range. And the third part is after the agents have ran, having very good observability, that everything that the agent did. So I broadly break it down into these 3 pieces. And, folks in the audience will realize, hey, these are the same 3 high-level pillars that we adopted for any SaaS security, any software security. Principles remain the same, Of course, how you do it changes because AI, which is powered by LLM, which are non-deterministic engines, they bring in certain unique aspects, certain class of attacks like prompt injection, jailbreaking did not exist before. The entire ability to dynamically reason, plan did not exist before, but now they do. So of course, the nitty-gritty details do vary, but the principles remain the same.
Ian, how is this mapping to how you're thinking about it, what you're seeing?
Yeah, it absolutely does. So I lead a product called Prisma AIRS that is the AI security platform here at Palo Alto Networks, the secure AI end-to-end. And as Sunil said, there's a lot of the same principles or areas that we would secure the rest of our software that we could start to adapt to AI. The difference here, and Sunil eloquently said this, is the non-deterministic nature of AI. And so that's where things are highly different than perhaps some of the other workloads that we look to protect. Not only that, some of the artifacts are unique. I'll give an example. Machine learning models that are the engine to AI applications, these are serialized. And as these models are serialized, they can hide hidden threats within it. Unsafe operators that can get access to your AWS credentials, or perhaps backdoors within the neural network that can manipulate an outcome of a model. Here's my point. My point is, yes, a lot of it is similar in terms of how we need to think about our software development lifecycle for machine learning and AI, but there are some unique elements to the artifacts themselves, as well as how do they behave in a non-deterministic nature. Not only that, as we start to look at agents, that's when this completely starts to, if you will, open up in terms of a threat vector. Effectively, we're giving AI arms and legs to go take actions on our behalf. And that's where things get incredibly valuable with AI, but also adds a lot more risk.
Sounds like a challenge. Let's shift to thinking about the how. Sunil, if you're brought in to help shore up an AI security system or security program, what are kind of the practical guardrails that you start with?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is, I start with threat modeling an agent. And then I'm trying to see that, how do I close down every attack vector? So in case of an agent, what are the various vectors that I need to worry about? The very first thing is I need to worry about the agentic identity. How is that agent going to act? Is it going to act on behalf of a user, or will the agent have its own identity? And in either case, what are the permissions? What are the scopes assigned to that agent? So that would be my first thing that I would want to go after. Now, closely associated with that is, the context. If this agent is operating within an enterprise environment, what's the enterprise context? That means what is the data this agent has access to? Because without data, the agent is no good. So now we got to understand which data do I provide access to my agent? How sensitive is that data? And is that the most relevant data for the intent of that agent? So that would be my second thing. First is the agent identity. Second is the enterprise context. The third is the autonomous guardrails, because now the agent is executing, and agents are built on LLM. We talked about it. Ian mentioned it's non-deterministic. It is fetching data. It is reasoning on that data dynamically. Because it's reasoning dynamically, you need to have runtime protection. You need to check that the data it fetched is not poisoned. It does not try to have any jailbreaking attempts within that, trying to subvert the intent of that agent. So what you got to be doing is doing real-time risk scoring and block anything malicious. So that would be my fourth thing. So the first, actor identity, enterprise context, autonomous guardrails, real-time risk scoring. The last one I would say is the entire observability. Is now making sure, because agents are, again, they are planning, they are reasoning, they're fetching more data, they're going into an iterative loop. You must have heard terms like agentic looping. That's making the entire thing very dynamic. You got to observe every step of that. And hence, you need the observability layer. And the layer, which is common across all these 5 steps, is the compliance part. You got to make sure if your agent is running in a particular regulatory environment that it is always compliant. Correct? It's following your HIPAA regulations, your FINRA regulations, whatever regulations are applicable to your specific company.
Maybe you can walk us now through how Glean and Palo Alto Networks together are making all of this real.
Yeah, I can take that. So similar to what Sunil was talking about, I think about it, in 3 steps. Discover all the AI that we're using. By the way, AI is in your cloud, it's on premises, it's on the endpoint, and it's in your amazing software vendors like Glean. And so what we need to do as a company at Palo Alto Networks is understand that and bring security to where you are doing AI. And in this case, with the great partnership that we have with Glean. So what do I mean? I'll give one example, and there are multiple to tease out here. But one of them is, as we, Palo Alto Networks, are a customer of Glean, we use Glean in terms of searching through all of our amazing enterprise data to answer HR questions, look at and find, financial information, customer details. All that is protected in terms of, all the great guardrails that Glean puts in place. But as it relates to the large language models and the interface that we're able to go into in Glean and freely type in questions, we then integrate, Glean has, with Prisma AIRS to put those runtime protections in, stopping jailbreaking, stopping the ability to use prompt injections to be able to get to data that perhaps you should not. And here's the great thing. You don't even have to log in to the Palo Alto Networks dashboard. You can do all of it natively within Glean. You can set new security policies for user groups, and you can bring all these great runtime protections natively where you are doing AI. And so, one, we're a great customer of Glean, but it was an amazing opportunity for the 2 companies to come together to bring this security to, again, where companies are interacting, where they're consuming, where they are doing AI.
You have anything to add to that, Sunil?
No, awesome. I mean, yes, Palo, the partnership is absolutely, I call it the match made in heaven. Glean does what it does. It brings in the entire search and the chat experience. Everything is permission enforced from the ground up. That's all great. But now as we adopt agentic AI, we got to make sure that we have the runtime security. Palo Alto AIRS, they bring in the best of the breed solution in this space, and not only just prompt injection, jailbreaking. Definitely those things are an area of concern for us. But at the same time, they also have DLP functionality built into the same models. They have the ability to detect malware. And again, those are all the things which are available during the runtime. If you happen to use Glean for generating code, you got to make sure that that code is free of vulnerabilities. Palo Alto's models bring that functionality. You got to make sure that no sensitive data is leaking. Again, all the models, all the runtime security Palo Alto has as part of the AIRS platform brings all of that. And not just that, we are working on many initiatives, and I'm sure we'll announce it soon, is also controlling what data is accessible by the agents. So if you think about it, I mentioned the 3 things, correct? Doing before the agent runs, while the agent runs, after the agent runs. So we talked about while the agent is running, everything Palo Alto is doing, correct? Glean and Palo Alto together. But before the agent runs, making sure only the right set of data is available, something that we are also actively working on along with Palo Alto. So very excited about the partnership.
That's great. Ian, maybe just to give a little more detail in terms of how the 2 products work together, you could walk through kind of an example. Like, say we have someone who's probably trying to do something that they shouldn't do with AI within Glean. How does the actual integration work?
Yep. So first off, let's talk about how it's set up. The simple thing is we give you an API key, meaning Palo Alto, you bring that over to Glean. It then lights up the capabilities of security all within Glean natively. And so there's a admin functionality where you can set, security profiles. And as Sunil mentioned, one of those security profiles that you can set up is around DLP, data loss, because one of the tricky things here as it relates to AI is making sure that it doesn't leak information that it's not supposed to, perhaps to a different part of the organization that doesn't have access or privileges to that particular data and information. And so these are things that we're able to put into the solution, again, natively. You do not leave the Glean experience, and you're able to set up these profiles for all of your user groups. And the magic about this, as Sunil talked about, is it just works. It works really well. I mean, Glean is a great solution, again, that we're a customer to search across all this information to also utilize to build AI functionality, and bringing the security there and having it live within that control plane, allowing you to manage it from a system administration perspective. That is a marriage, if you will, of two companies coming together to create a very elegant solution to be able to secure this end to end.
Great. Well, I think we're at this point we can move into some of the Q&A, and there's been some great questions posted. So we'll start with the first one from Thor Peterson. He says, we rely heavily on Glean for AI guardrails and identity-centric responses. We'd love to learn more about what offerings there are securing identity and access controls on the MCP side.
Yep.
Yeah. So for MCP, as you know, generally within Glean, the approach we have taken is everything always happens in the context of a user. That means you have to authenticate yourself to Glean. All the search, all the chat always happens in the context of a user. So all the permissions that you have set in each of the data sources, they are all applicable. You don't have to do any changes. We are bringing the same DNA to MCP so that when you want to take any action using MCP, it is again the same user. The user authenticates to the Jira, to Slack. So all the permissions that you have set for that user in any of the systems that you are asking the agent to take action, all those permissions are applicable at all the time. So you do not have to do anything different to start developing agents and have those agents take action via MCP in any of the systems that you connect to Glean.
Yeah, and I think just a plus one, what Sunil said there, one of the big pillars of at least agentic security is absolutely identity, authentication, privileges, rights to actually carry out actions, by the agent. And so being able to be, leverage all the great identity aspects within Glean and then carry that through in terms of agentic workloads is an amazing place to start. Because again, as Sunil, you said earlier in the conversation, a lot of it is the similar stuff that we were doing, just applied in a slightly different approach. And this is one of those areas that, again, identity is a key pillar of anything as it relates to security of AI, especially within agentic workflows.
We can go to the next question. This is from Philip Hoopman. Is Palo Alto going to be releasing a comprehensive MCP server for their products?
Yeah, so I can touch on this a little bit. I'm not going to speak collectively for the company, but we do have, MCP servers that are able to access capabilities, for example, with Prisma AIRS. And so you can go and you can find that. Perhaps as a follow-up, we can include links to that. But yes, that is a mechanism to be able to, not only integrate, but I should say partner and work with Palo Alto Networks for Prisma AIRS is through an MCP server. Absolutely.
Just to add to that, of course, MCPs are great. Now, in case there are existing APIs and for any functionality where you might not even have an MCP, but you have very rich set of APIs and a CLI, now Glean also supports skills. Now, using skills within Glean, you can take advantage of all the CLIs or the APIs you might have and interact even if an MCP does not exist for any of the tool that you want to connect to.
Right. This is a question where I suspect both of you have some opinions. What is the evaluation, tooling, process, and guidance specifically that you would suggest or advise?
Yeah. Why don't I start on this one?
Sure.
I would not put any AI workload live in production without behaviorally testing that AI workload. So there's two different types of tests you can do, which is one, look at, for example, the code, see if there's any particular vulnerabilities, malicious code in there. But then as we talked about AI being non-deterministic, we need to test that behaviorally. We should test it for AI applications, model endpoints, as well as agentic workflows. And when we test that, you can then start to break it down across multiple categories. Categories such as what are security risks, what are safety risks, and for a lot of AI workloads that are at least external facing, what are perhaps brand risk elements to it. And so you can red team these assets, get a scorecard, and then the output of that scorecard allows you to make go, no-go decisions all the way through in terms of how you tune your policies at the point of runtime to detect these risks and stop these risks from happening, which is, as an example, the integration that we have with Glean is you can set those rules in place once you've tested these applications and understand what the risks might be.
Cool. I'll present my take at it, maybe taking some of the words, the evaluation and the tooling, a little bit more generically. So I am also the CISO here, as I mentioned. So of course I have that dual responsibility. I got to make sure that, and also managing IT, that we adopt AI and, I do not slow down. So no is not an answer, correct? I got to encourage people to adopt Gen AI solutions so that we can go faster. And of course, coding assistants are all the rage, correct? But now how do you adopt it safely and securely? So one thing that I look at always is visibility, making sure I have complete visibility into every agentic application, whether those agentic application happen to be my cursor, my Claude code, or agents developed on Glean. So having complete visibility and then configuring them securely. So within my environment, of course, YOLO mode, if you guys are familiar, if you guys use cursor, that's a no-no, correct? You got to, if you want YOLO mode, it has to execute in a sandbox. Else you have to prompt the user. So complete visibility, configure it securely, make sure that you have least privilege at all time, and you can observe everything that your agentic application did. Again, it's a very common theme that you must have seen that during the entire conversation, a three-part answer, correct? That how do you evaluate toolings before you adopt it safely and roll it out to production?
Okay, next question from Vijay Dorai. If I am the creator of Glean AI prompt or apps, is there a way I can set up a counter to check how many users have used my prompt?
I think the answer is yes. There's a lot of you as an admin. If you are a Glean admin, definitely there are a lot of insights we provide to the administrator. We are working actively so that if you are a creator of the app and not a Glean admin, then you will get similar insights as to how many times people have used it, how many times people have found value, and if they have not found value, if they have provided feedback. So this is something that we can definitely follow up, Benton, that, what's the ETA when all this functionality is available to the app creator, not just the Glean admin.
By the way, just to add there, I think this is a really important and great question because it's not just, I think, a technology question. It's a human level question in terms of also how are we teaching our teams the best practices on how to utilize the features. And in this case, that was brought up, the prompts, that are being created and create a loop to be able to measure that, so that we understand, what's being used, what's not being used, and the further trainings that we can do for our teams. A lot of, people within companies are experimenting with AI, they're using AI, but they might not know how to get the most value out of AI. And so if you're able to leverage those metrics to enhance your trainings within the companies, that's where you're going to see a lot greater results. To touch on, Sunil, what you said on the coding example, because we use coding assistants here at Palo Alto Networks. One of my distinguished engineers, as he was talking about it, said, Ian, with coding assistants, you might have garbage in, meaning a bad prompt, garbage out. But the problem with AI coding assistants is it doesn't smell like garbage. My point with that is We need to be able to not only develop the best systems and technology in place to create guardrails and encourage adoption, but also we need to train our people on how to best utilize these tools to get the right outcome.
No, absolutely, Ian. And I'm sure we can talk about at length as to how different companies are adopting coding assistants and coding agents. And we at Glean absolutely have taken in forward-leaning approach. 100% of R&D is adopted it, and I would say we have actually changed how we do SDLC, and agents are part of our SDLC, correct? And how we are actually, people are switching away from actually being software developers to being software engineers. That means, okay, how do you engineer the product, correct? And use all the coding assistant the right way so that you are confident of the result in what the coding assistant is generating. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a topic
absolutely.
for some other
we're on
day,
the
but
same
fascinating
page.
topic. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. That's a whole nother webinar that we can dive super deep on.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think we have time for about maybe one or two more questions. So this one from Mahesh Gupta. So Palo Alto is doing client-side security when someone's accessing LLMs outside of the network as a firewall solution. And Glean protects against your in-house AI MCP deployments. Do I have that right?
Maybe Ian, I'll let you answer the Palo
I'll
Alto side. I'll take the second part.
Yeah, I'll answer the Palo Alto side. Yeah, so on the Palo Alto side, what we're looking at is the inputs and the outputs, that are going into, the Glean solution. And we're analyzing those across a series of detectors, looking for things like, malicious URLs. We talked about DLP to prompt injection attacks. But as we look at those inputs and outputs, we're also looking at embeddings, tool calls, trying to get a session view so that we can understand is there multi-turn attacks. But to the point that you bring up, yeah, we're at the point of inference. And so you can almost think of us as a firewall layer that's looking at those inputs, at those outputs, tying it back to a myriad, if you will, of security detectors, protections that are built into profiles. And then the other area, Sunil, you can definitely cover.
Yeah, so absolutely, Mahesh. So we do, whenever you use MCP for taking any actions, we secure that, by integrating with Palo Alto at the point of inferencing. But we go way beyond that, correct? So even if you're not using MCP, correct? I mean, you're just using Glean Search or Glean chatbot that we call Glean Assistant. All of that is also secured, both from the ground up, making sure that the permissions are enforced at every layer. No user gets access to data that they're not privy to. And then, even after that, making sure that all the responses you get from the LLMs, there's no hallucination going on. It is completely grounded in the enterprise information. And then, of course, there's no prompt injection, no jailbreaking going on, no toxic content is being returned. All of that is where we integrate with Palo Alto. So I would say the amount of security that's built in Glean plus Palo Alto goes way beyond MCP.
All right, we're almost at time, but I think let's address this one last from Philip Hootman. How would you procure this integration? Through Palo, or is it an add-on to Glean?
Yep. So we'll definitely provide a demo. I think we'll include that probably in the follow-up. We can stitch that here. But the super simple thing is we can go to Glean. You can talk to your account managers at Glean. We will work together with those teams. We will then enable you to get what's called a Prisma AIRS API key. You just plug that into Glean, and the solution, like magic, just works. Again, it brings security to where you do AI. And the last comment as we're wrapping up for me is truly every software vendor is now an AI company. And in many cases, you start to lose discoverability, start to lack access to what is being used, how it's being used, and controls and security of that. And what I'm really impressed with the Glean team is they have leaned forward and they said, yes, we're an AI company and we're putting AI all throughout in terms of our customer experience, but we want to make sure that it's safe, that it's trusted, and that it's secure. And so I really commend the Glean team to really lean forward of how they have, throughout this entire partnership has been amazing.
No, I'd definitely like to thank Ian and, of course, the Palo Alto team, correct, as to how great partner they have been. But I guess if there's any question on the integration, of course, you can reach out to either of the companies. You can reach out to your Glean rep, or you could reach out to your Palo Alto rep, and I'm sure we'll make sure that the integration works as smoothly as possible.
Right. Well, thank you both very much. Really appreciate it. I think we'll wrap there, and look forward to following up on the questions that we can, and really appreciate the engagement from all the folks that came to listen.
Thank you. Thanks, Anil. Thanks, Ben.
Right. Thank you so much.